Hello, story lovers. Tonight, we're diving into a tale of passion, secrets, and choices that could change everything. Hearts will be broken, love will be tested, and every twist will leave you on the edge of your seat. Comment below where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, hit like, subscribe, share it with someone who loves a powerful love story, and tap the bell so you never miss the next thrilling chapter. Ready? Let's begin. Asterisk, the rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Damen Cross's corner office. Each drop a reminder of the storm brewing both outside and within. At 34, he commanded an empire worth billions, yet tonight he felt like a man drowning in his own success. The city stretched endlessly below him, a constellation of ambitions and broken dreams. His phone buzzed with another message from Rachel, his fiancé of convenience. "Where are you?" The investors are asking questions. He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Not when his mind kept circling back to 8 years ago. To the woman who had walked away from him in this very building's lobby, her green eyes filled with tears and fury. The elevator chimed. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Cross, there's someone here to see you." She says it's urgent. "I'm not taking meetings, sir." She said to tell you it's about the Sterling account. The blood in his veins turned to ice. Sterling, he hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years, though it lived in the shadows of every decision he made. Send her up. The minutes crawled by like hours. When the elevator doors opened, Victoria Sterling stepped into his office, and the world tilted on its axis. She wore a black coat soaked from the rain, her auburn hair darker now, her face sharper with the kind of pain that carves itself into bone. But those eyes, those impossible green eyes, were exactly as he remembered. "Hello, Damen." Her voice was different, colder, like winter settling over spring. He stood slowly, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. "Victoria, after all this time, I know what you did." The words cut through the air between them. "I know about the paintings, about the gallery, about everything." His carefully constructed world began to crack. The secret he'd buried, the guilt he'd carried like a stone in his chest for 8 years, was standing in front of him in a rain-soaked coat, demanding answers he'd never planned to give. "I can explain, can you?" She stepped closer, and he caught the faint scent of jasmine and rain that had once been his salvation. "Can you explain why you've been buying my paintings through shell companies? Why you destroyed my first gallery showing? Why you've spent 8 years making sure I could never escape you even when I thought I had?" The truth hung between them like a blade, sharp enough to cut through everything he'd built. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating her face in stark detail. She was beautiful and terrifying and absolutely furious. "I never meant for you to find out." Her laugh was bitter as winter wind. "But I did. And now I'm here to collect what you owe me." Victoria's words echoed in the silence that followed. The city's heartbeat pulsed through the glass walls as Damen stared at the woman who had once been his entire world and was now his reckoning. "What do you want?" His voice was steady, but she could see the tremor in his hands. "I want my life back." She pulled a manila folder from her bag, a photograph spilling across his pristine desk. Images of her paintings, gallery documents, bank transfers, evidence of his obsession laid bare. 8 years, Damen. 8 years of thinking I wasn't good enough, that my art meant nothing. Do you have any idea what that does to someone? He did know. He'd watched her from the shadows, seen her struggle, her doubt, her small victories that should have been triumphs. Each purchased painting was a piece of his heart he couldn't take back. "I was protecting you. From what? Success? Happiness?" Her voice cracked, revealing the wound beneath the anger. "Or were you protecting yourself from watching me move on?" The accusation hit its mark. He'd told himself he was helping her, ensuring she could pay rent, keeping her art alive. But the truth was uglier. He couldn't let go. Victoria walked to the window, her reflection ghost-like against the storm. "I'm getting married." The words hit him like a physical blow. "What?" "His name is Marcus. He's a good man, kind. He loves me." She turned back to face him. "But I can't marry him with your shadow hanging over my life. So here's what's going to happen. She moved closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes, close enough to remember what it felt like to hold her. You're going to transfer every painting back to me. You're going to publicly admit what you did. And you're going to disappear from my life forever. And if I refuse, her smile was sharp as broken glass. Then I go to the press. Tech billionaire's secret stalker obsession. I think that would make quite the headline, don't you? The threat should have angered him. Instead, he found himself studying the determined set of her jaw, the way she held herself like a blade ready to strike. She'd grown stronger in their years apart, forged in the fire of his selfish love. There's another option.
I'm listening.
Marry me instead. The words hung in the air like a dare. Victoria's eyes widened, then narrowed with suspicion. You're insane. 1 year. Give me 1 year to prove I've changed. If at the end of that time you still want to leave, I'll give you everything. The paintings of fortune to start over anywhere you want. Complete freedom. But if I stay, what? Then we try again. For real this time? She was quiet for so long he wondered if she'd heard him. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. You destroyed us once. Why would you think I'd give you the chance to do it again? Because you're still here. He stepped closer, close enough to touch her if he dared. You could have exposed me from a distance, but you came here, to this office, to face me. That means something. It means I wanted to watch you burn, maybe. Or, it means you're not as over us as you pretend to be. The lightning flashed again, illuminating the war in her eyes. He could see her weighing his words against her pain, her future against their past. 1 year, she said finally, but I have conditions. Asterisk. 3 months into their arrangement, Victoria stood in Damen's penthouse kitchen. Morning sunlight streaming through windows that cost more than most people's homes. She wore one of his shirts over her underwear, her hair tangled from sleep, looking like she belonged there. The sight of her made his chest tight with something dangerously close to hope. Your fiancé called again, she said without looking at him, pouring coffee with steady hands. Rachel seems quite concerned about your sudden disappearance from society. Damen watched her move through his space with feline grace, remembering how she used to make coffee in their tiny college apartment, humming off key melodies that somehow made everything perfect. Ex-fiancé. I ended it the night you came back. How noble of you. Her tone was sharp, but he caught the slight softening around her eyes. Though I suppose it would have been awkward explaining why your wife was living in your spare room. She'd insisted on separate bedrooms, separate lives existing under the same roof. It was torture and salvation, wrapped in silk pajamas and morning conversations that felt almost normal. It wasn't about awkwardness. He moved closer, drawn like a moth to flame. It was about honesty. For once in my life, Victoria set down her cup, finally meeting his gaze. In the morning light, he could see the exhaustion she tried to hide. The way she held herself, like she was constantly preparing for impact. You want honesty? I called Marcus yesterday. The name hit him like cold water. And I told him I needed more time. He's a patient man, but I could hear it in his voice. He's starting to understand that this isn't about time. What's it about? She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city that sprawled beneath them. You want to know what the worst part was? All those years thinking I wasn't good enough? It wasn't just about my art, it was about you. About wondering what I'd done wrong to make you leave so easily. The pain in her voice cut him deeper than any blade. Victoria, I know. She turned back to him, tears threatening but not falling. I know now that you were young and scared and making impossible choices. But knowing doesn't erase 8 years of feeling worthless. He reached for her then, slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hands framed her face like she was made of spun glass. You were never worthless. You were everything. You still are. Don't. But she didn't move away from his touch. Don't make this harder than it has to be. What if I don't want to make it easy? Before she could answer, his phone rang. The caller ID made his blood freeze. Victoria saw his expression change and stepped back. Who is it? My father, She knew enough about his family to understand what that meant. The man who had torn them apart once was calling again. Damen answered, his voice carefully neutral. "Hello, Dad." His father's voice was cold steel through the speaker. "We need to talk. I know about your house guest." Victoria watched color drain from Damen's face. She could hear enough of the conversation to understand that their fragile bubble was about to burst. "How long have you known?" Damen asked. "Long enough? Fix this, son, or I'll fix it for you." "The way I should have 8 years ago." The line went dead. In the silence that followed, Victoria saw the boy Damen had once been, torn between love and duty, breaking under the weight of impossible expectations. "He's going to come after me, isn't he?" she asked quietly. Damen's jaw tightened. "Over my dead body. Damen, you don't understand. I can't go through this again. I won't survive it. Then we don't let him win."
How?
"He's your father. He controls your company, your inheritance, everything you've built. Then I'll burn it all down before I let him touch you." The words were spoken with such fierce certainty that Victoria felt something crack open in her chest. This was the man she'd fallen in love with all those years ago, the one who would fight the world for what he believed in. But she'd learned the hard way that love wasn't always enough. "There's something I haven't told you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "About Marcus. About why I really can't marry him." Damen went very still. "What?" "I'm pregnant." Asterisk, the words hung in the air like a death sentence. Damen stared at Victoria, his world reshaping itself around this new, impossible truth. "How far along?" His voice was barely human. 10 weeks. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly small in his oversized shirt. "It happened that first night. When I came to your office in the rain." The memory crashed over him. After she'd left, he'd found her waiting in the parking garage, soaked and shivering. They'd fought until words became touches. Touches became desperation. And desperation became the kind of reckless abandon that burns down everything in its path. Marcus doesn't know. Of course he doesn't know. Her laugh was hollow. "How do you tell a good man that you're carrying another man's child? Especially when that man is the reason you're broken in the first place?" Damen moved toward her, but she stepped back, shaking her head. "Don't. I can't think when you touch me. Victoria, we can figure this out." "We can." "Can what?" "Playhouse. Pretend we're not to people who destroy everything we touch." Before he could answer, the elevator chimed. They both froze. No one should have access to his private penthouse. "Expecting someone?" Victoria asked, but the look on Damen's face told her everything she needed to know. Marcus Rivera stepped out of the elevator, impeccably dressed and carrying a briefcase that looked expensive enough to feed a small country. He was everything Damen wasn't. Steady, kind, predictable, safe. "Hello." Victoria, his voice was gentle, disappointed but not surprised. "I've been looking for you, Marcus." The guilt in her voice was evident. "How did you? Your friend Rachel was very helpful. She thought I should know about your living arrangements." Marcus set down his briefcase, his eyes never leaving Victoria's face. "She also had some interesting theories about why you've been avoiding my calls." Damen stepped forward, instinctively protective. "You need to leave, actually, I don't." Marcus smiled, but it was sharp around the edges. "You see, I've been doing some research on you, Mr. Cross. Fascinating reading. Did you know your father's company has been under federal investigation for the past 6 months?" The blood drained from Damen's face. "What are you talking about?" "Tax evasion, money laundering, securities fraud. Quite the list. The kind of charges that don't just destroy companies, they destroy families." Marcus opened his briefcase, pulling out a thick folder. "I'm an attorney, you see. Specialized in corporate crime, and I've been building quite the case." Victoria looked between the two men, understanding dawning like a cold sunrise. "Marcus, what are you doing?" "I'm saving you." He turned to her, his expression softening. "From him, from his family, from a life that will only bring you pain." "I know about the baby, Victoria. I've known for weeks." "How?" "I had you followed. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I love you. And I knew that if Cross was back in your life, you'd need protection from your own heart. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. Not Marcus's surveillance, but the cold calculation behind it. The man she'd thought was safe had been pulling strings just as surely as Damen had. You used me, she whispered. I protected you. There's a difference, is there? Damen's voice was deadly quiet. Because from where I stand, it looks like you've been playing the same game I was. The only difference is, you convinced yourself you were the hero. Marcus's composure cracked slightly. I am the hero. You destroyed her once. You bought her art to control her, manipulated her life from the shadows. You think a few months of playing house erases that? At least I loved her. The words came out raw, bleeding. You see her as a project to be saved, and you see her as a possession to be won. Stop. Victoria's voice cut through their argument like a blade. Both of you, just stop. She moved to the window, her reflection ghost-like against the glass. When she spoke again, her voice was steady as stone. Marcus, you had me followed. You built a case against Damen's family, not for justice, but to manipulate me. You knew about the pregnancy and said nothing, letting me torture myself with guilt. She turned to Damen. And you've spent 8 years playing God with my life. Even now, even knowing how much it hurt me. Part of you thinks you were right to do it. Neither man could deny her. Words. Here's what's going to happen. She moved to the coffee table, picking up a pen and paper. I'm going to write down an address. In 3 hours, I'll be there. Whoever shows up gets to know the truth about this baby, about my choice, about everything. But if you both come, or if either of you brings lawyers or threats or games, I disappear forever, she wrote quickly, her hands steady, despite the tears now falling freely. I'm done being fought over like a prize. I'm done being saved. I'm done being owned. She set the paper on the table and walked to the elevator. Victoria. Wait, Damen started after her, but she held up a hand. I loved you both in different ways. But love isn't supposed to feel like drowning. The elevator doors closed behind her, leaving the two men alone with their guilt and her ultimatum. On the table, the address seemed to mock them both. A choice that would determine not just their futures, but the future of the child she carried. The address led to a small art gallery in Brooklyn, the kind of place Victoria had always dreamed of showing her work. Through the rain-streaked windows, Damen could see her inside, standing before a canvas that took his breath away. She'd painted their story. Not the version from the magazines or Marcus's legal files, but the truth of it. A man and woman reaching for each other across an abyss, their fingers barely touching, surrounded by the wreckage of choices and circumstances and love that demanded too high a price. He checked his watch. 2 hours and 57 minutes since she'd left. He'd spent that time liquidating assets, transferring funds, burning bridges with his father that could never be rebuilt. If she chose him, they'd have enough to start over somewhere far from the ghosts of Manhattan. If she didn't, at least she'd have the freedom to choose her own destruction. The gallery door chimed as he entered. Victoria didn't turn around. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said softly. I wasn't sure either. He moved closer, studying the painting. It's magnificent. It's honest. Finally, they stood in silence. Two people who had loved each other badly, but completely, waiting for whatever came next. Marcus isn't coming, she said finally. How do you know? Because I know him. He's a good man, Damen, truly, but he's also proud. And he knows that if he walked through that door, he'd be admitting that love isn't logical or safe or fair. She turned to face him, and he saw that she'd been crying. I'm keeping the baby. Good. It might not be yours. The lie sat between them like a stone. They both knew the truth, had known it from the moment she'd spoken. But he understood why she needed to say it. Doesn't matter, it should matter. Everything should matter more than it does with us. She was right. They were chaos wrapped in inevitability, passion disguised as destruction. They would hurt each other again, probably sooner than later. But they would also love each other with a ferocity that made the pain worthwhile. I transferred everything, he said. The company shares, the properties, the investments. It's all in your name now. Her eyes widened. Damen, no. You can't. I can, and I did. Your gallery, your choice, your future. Love it. No strings, no conditions. What about us? That's up to you. She was quiet for a long time, studying his face like she was memorizing it. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I'm scared of me. Of us. Of how much I still love you despite everything. Of how much I want this to work. He reached for her then, slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, cupped her face in his hands like she was made of light and shadow, and all the dreams he'd ever been afraid to speak aloud. Then let's be scared together. She kissed him then, fierce and desperate and full of all the words they'd never been able to say. When they broke apart, she was crying again. But this time, it was different. This time it was relief. We're going to mess this up, she whispered against his lips. Probably, we're going to hurt each other, definitely, and it's going to be worth it. Anyway, every single time, outside, the rain had stopped. Through the gallery windows, Manhattan glittered like a promise they might finally be ready to keep. They had destroyed each other once, would probably do it again. But they had also created something beautiful in the wreckage. A love that survived betrayal and time and the weight of their own worst choices. Victoria took his hand, lacing their fingers together.
Come on!
Let's go home. They walked out into the night together, leaving the gallery and its painted truths behind. Whatever came next would be their choice, their fight, their love, and for the first time in 8 years, that felt like enough. In the window of the gallery, Victoria's painting caught the last of the evening light. A man and woman reaching for each other across an abyss, their fingers finally, impossibly touching. The end.